we're pretty good at governance on generalized conventional machine learning, generative. I guess I suppose companies could monitor your prompt streams. I don't know how that would work.
I know that
Like an IT group would want to do.
like ours has like restrictions in prompts where like if it thinks something's bad, it'll just say error, it's not working right now or something like that.
Okay, now where in the software stack is that? It's got to be between.
That's a co-pilot thing between whatever contract they have.
Yeah, but I'm trying to decide where that restriction would be.
So I don't know if the AI is gonna get that. Because it's not that like I send it and then it says, oh, I'm not allowed to see that. It'll just error out and won't even let me click the submit button.
I guess that's a Copilot add-on. Trying to figure
It must
out
be, it's probably a corporate thing.
Yeah. Well, prompting where the action is. Okay, real quick examples on maintenance. Once you've got the idea of your fraud detection went off, when American Express did it, they just did a model update. And all they did was follow through with extra data. And so what it led to, of course, was improvement. That was their model update. Their results, they dropped the fraud losses and kept a good idea on false positives. Spotify, they did a model update as well. And this as opposed to completely rebuilding the model. So all you do is you add in extra data and, that's your maintenance. By the way, maintenance feeds into monitoring. It also feeds into the generative AI and it feeds into that virtuous loop all the way to new data. H&M did the same thing, but they retrained the model. So that gets a little interesting. Model updating has new features, retraining adds extra data, and that's what H&M did. Good results. Delta Airline retrained their model again with data after COVID because it turns out, you got some good news for the airlines. You go into COVID, you reduce your routes dramatically. That meant that a lot of aircraft could have maintenance done, which they couldn't have done before because they'd be flying. That's the good news. The bad news is you got to store those planes. That's really dicey, and so their wear patterns started turning out differently. Their scheduled maintenance got blown up because obviously the planes weren't flying, and so you can see their cadence was interrupted. And so they just brought in new data and retrained the model. What's interesting is before COVID, we'd really not experienced a pandemic since Spanish flu. And if you look at pictures of the Spanish flu in 1918 and 19, we went about 100 years. If you'll notice, what was everybody doing in those pictures?
They were also wearing masks.
Everybody's wearing masks. I really have to wonder if anybody was bitching about it back then. That was a completely unexpected result here, the last thing. And so we're having to rebuild a lot of our healthcare models. The question is, what do we do when the next pandemic shows up? So they did a good job with their predictive model retraining, no problem. Again, what you end up with is you've got a set of data pre-COVID, you've got some COVID data, and then you're using the new set of data coming in. COVID data sits over here for the next pandemic. You're not going to delete it, but what you're going to do is when you bring your operational data, remember I was telling you don't get your ROI too fast. They had to have 18 months post-pandemic flights of training to get their predictive algorithms back. That was good. Capital One did the same thing. They had to handle their maintenance, and so their default accuracy dropped during rapid inflation. By the way, we haven't seen inflation figures yet for what's going on this year. It'll be interesting if we end up with something like this again. But again, you've got it. Notice macroeconomic indicators. They're trying to look for economic shifts. By the way, one of the things that's not mentioned in any of these, I don't know how much is going on about what happened with the Ukraine conflict. Geopolitically, international companies are certainly impacted by what's going on in Europe. And so it's kind of fascinating to me. I don't see any of this showing up in any of these models, other than what? Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world, was. Okay, wheat prices, we have an interesting situation going on there going forward. But Capital One's looking for risk, and they did their assessment. Rotterdam had an interesting machine learning system for their ships. And they've got maintenance on their models, and they had to look at this, updating vessel behavior models with traffic patterns. And they've got a lot of ship movers. It's a major port on the western side of Europe. So they had to look for docking times and so forth. They've got all kind of sensors. They ran a lot of sims. They had to update their weather pattern naturally. And so it helped them identify that their GPS signal quality from satellites was affecting navigation guidance. That's pretty interesting when you're dealing with ships the size of a city. So what they did, they had emergency maintenance cycle triggered. They noticed they had error rates during foggy conditions. Well, do you think, by the way, your eyes go out, human eyes go out, and if your GPS signals degrade like these, you got a problem. So they go to backup navigation. Notice ultra-large container vessels. That's really interesting because they were showing up in the fog differently. And I'm not sure the model was expecting one thing, and these things are so large, probably they were underestimating the size of the ship. But if you're looking for berthing, you've got a real problem here. What are you using, tugs and so forth? So they retrained their radar signature recognition and fix the integration issues. That's really nice. Collisions are frowned upon at that level. And if you'll notice, they've got berthing efficiency improved, fuel consumption, which every shipping line is the holy grail, and they've got good reliability. I want you to think about this. Those ultra-large carriers are probably 1.5 times the size of those big cruise ships. Well, Rotterdam's port has started pushing their, shall we say, product out to cruise ship areas around the world. And you'll notice, anybody taking a cruise lately? Europe has put the hammer down on cruise ships. European population is sick to death of 4,000 people thundering off a cruise ship in a town of 30,000. And they are, well, look at it this way. The cruise ships can't come in the harbors now, the inner harbors, especially Venice. Okay, so they're making them anchor offshore, so you have to tender everybody in. Those little boats, well, that takes a long time. The cruise ships are not happy. They're not even allowed to use this because they're not allowed to get close enough to even to the ports. So we're okay in the Caribbean. If you guys go to Europe, factor in some time here. So that's monitoring and maintenance, very important. Generative AI it's a mess. Number one, and don't everybody forget this, is the difference between generative AI and conventional AI. Okay, you guys know this, most people don't. The media does not know this. So anytime you see some hysterical study, like 95% of AI projects in the last year have failed, those are all generative AI. Okay, all right. So the guts of generative AI are foundation models. So what do? It's a gigantic neural network. It's a physical side. Notice, very large scale, billions of parameters. It's a pre-trained model. Everybody remember pre-trained. It provides general purpose capabilities and so forth that you adapt to specific tasks. Okay, that's how it works. The developers, read that, tech professionals, they pre-train these models. Notice unsupervised, semi-supervised, or self-supervised learning. Group these all together in, this is hands-off learning. Humans are not dealing with this. It's essentially unsupervised. If you say self-supervised, that means the model's doing it itself, which it is. Unsupervised, no human input. So basically, I'm turning the model loose and I'm applying it to really massive data sets. Now, what kind of data? You guys are familiar with this now. Unstructured, unlabeled, non-classified. You guys know the difference between supervised and unsupervised learning. We're doing unsupervised, it's unlabeled data. It's a wild, wild west. So what do you tell your model? I'm going to feed data to you, tons of it. Go find patterns. Do you define the patterns? You do not. That's what it does. It's essentially the next evolution of deep learning. These models are turned loose and the data's in there, go find patterns. Unstructured data, you're very familiar with this, not fixed formats, doesn't fit the data sets, databases and so forth, many forms, but here's the deal. Everything you can possibly imagine gets crammed into these models. Now they're pre-trained, which means that I'm not going to put imagery into a large language model. Okay, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about pre-training. We'll come back to that. But remember, it's unsupervised data, unsupervised learning on unstructured data. All right, so here's the deal. Here's a pre-trained foundation model, okay? This is on this side of the slide on purpose. On the other side, this is your traditional paradigm. This is your new paradigm. This is traditional, where you have task-specific data, which you guys are all playing with now. You put it into an AI model, okay? Data, algorithms, that's your AI model, and you apply those results to a task. Standard stuff, conventional machine learning. All right, over here. I still have structured data, but it's brought in late. So I start with unstructured data, unsupervised learning. Here are just a few examples. These are pre-trained. So I pre-trained this model for language understanding. Another pre-trained model could be for text generation. Another one could be image. Another could be speech. These are separate foundation models. They are pre-trained. So what I do is I get, and these are 4 examples of pre-trained foundation models. As soon as I get this started, I have to fine tune them. Okay, so what I do when I fine tuning, I start adding in a little bit of structured data. So language understanding becomes sentiment analysis. Text generation for specifics. Image, object detection, speech recognition, natural language processing. Once I've fine-tuned these pre-trained models, I get a fine-tuned model. Now, that's the first initial fine-tuning. The second one is, I'm going to fine-tune again with labeled data here. I've used labeled data here to get that first initial fine-tuning. I use another set, not a particularly large set of labeled data, to apply these fine-tuned models to these tasks. Okay, can I apply them to the same task? Yeah, but essentially you're trying to do 2 different things. But this is what a foundation model does. We're all pre-trained, unsupervised on unstructured data, and then I start fine-tuning it. Where are we in all this? We're not there. This is all technical, which is really good news for us. None of us really want to pre-train a foundation model. Okay, we want to use it. So this is exactly what foundation models do. Keep the traditional paradigm in mind. This has not gone away. Okay, conventional machine learning, if you will, generative machine learning over there. That's foundation models. Okay. I've got a broad base of knowledge. Okay, so it lets it go with a wide range of tasks. How do I get specific tasks? 2 layers of fine tuning. You can transfer learning. And that's where a model can be reused. If you develop from one task, you can use it as a starting point of a model for another task. Now, You don't want the tasks to be totally different. So an initial task and then a more specific task would be a better way to talk about transformers or transfer learning. They do have generalization capabilities. This comes into what we're going to talk about with emerging capabilities. Sometimes these models will do stuff you didn't train them to do. An example. Okay, Kiva Systems, when it got bought by Amazon, they started putting it at scale. In Amazon fulfillment centers, I was telling you how they started organizing the shelves. They weren't programmed to do that. Okay, here's all the examples. There's a whole any number of these things. By the way, everything we talk about in here as far as GPT, Claude, Gemini, and so forth, those are large language models. Okay. This is what we've got here. Vast amounts of text, data. Now the idea is to understand and generate or create human-like language. Okay. And we all know about all the language-related tasks they can do. Answering questions, writing content, translating between languages, brainstorming, ideation, anything you can think about, depending on the prompt. Well, where's the prediction? All these things are doing is they've got these a vast amount of text data coming in, which is, of course, unstructured, and I want to predict the next token. Well, a token could be a couple of letters, one word, several words, and I just keep predicting that until I build out the textual answer. So I'm just predicting what the next token will be with gigantic neural networks. So you look at this, it looks really simple because you can all use it with no training at all. Right, it's only 3 years old. It's 2025. High school kids picked up on it real fast. These models are huge, larger than traditional models. Much more complex, much more black boxed, which is bad news. Suck up a lot of data, bad news, and so forth. Breadth of knowledge, foundation models are broader, deeper understanding of the data they're using. Traditional models are typically designed for specific tasks, so they're narrow in scope. Emergent capabilities, this is where you get to the black box problem. These behaviors are not explicitly programmed. If you've got emergent capabilities, that means the developers didn't anticipate them. It's really hard to anticipate an edge case if you're a developer. So you're on the technical side here, and by the way, who notices emergent capabilities? Business professionals or the tech people?
Business professionals.
Business professionals. This shows up, you guys are looking at this going, what is this? Amazon basically, at least in one of their fulfillment centers, the executive in charge, it's an executive in charge of one of those gigantic fulfillment centers. He and his staff were watching the bots on a screen, and they were noticing the way the shelves were changing. Because you can look from the top down, you get a God view. And they were saying, well, why are the shelves like that? And they had to go digging in the neural network. And the bots were thinking their way through it. So business professionals picked this up. Traditional models, fortunately, do not exhibit emergent capabilities. If y'all have a project and you've discovered an emergent capability, please let me know. The fine tuning, you're tuning it to perform a more specific task. That's all you're trying to do. It's supervised learning because you're using labeled data. You don't have to use much of it. Initial stage, you pre-train it like we talked about. Second stage, more fine tuning, and it applies to the task. Now the key here of foundation models, there are a lot of these things out here. There's pretty much a foundation model for every industry vertical. There's also foundation models for specific functions, accounting, finance, supply chain. You do not have to use a generalized model when you get out of here. Go hunt for the one that applies to you. You're in healthcare. All right, start there. You are we were talking about that agents in healthcare. then start hunting around and see if it applies to what you're doing in healthcare. I mean, it's just some broad area. Okay, now, there are a lot of applications here. Let's all get away from just GPT and Claude. It's an entire class of models. I'd really like to come up with new content. High quality, well, that's questionable. Original, very questionable. Previously unseen to the user. Content pattern strategies. Now look, this stuff's already on the web. It's very difficult to come up with a definition that says it's new to the user. The user has no idea if it's high quality or not, particularly if the user's on the wrong end of a prompt. In other words, if you guys, the quality of a prompt is based on how much input you guys give it and how much knowledge you have of the area. You have no idea when the stuff comes out there is high quality unless you check it. If you use it as a crutch, you're not checking it. You're Control C, Control V. Okay? Original, it's not original. Where'd it come from? They've repackaged what they've scraped off the web. So you got to be real careful about the word original, both in the data that comes in and the output. Previously unseen, well, there's a lot of data on the internet we've not seen. Now, if you're going to look for patterns or strategies, this means that I've got far more data that a human could possibly assimilate and integrate in a lifetime. So you could come up with some actual new content here. But remember, they're going to look realistic, and hopefully they're not copied from the training data. There are lawsuits underway on this very point. Here are the applications, obviously. Content creation, text, image, product design, prototyping, anything you can think of, you can put in there and see what it'll come up with. These are what we call, just single mode content creation. As we know, as you guys know, we have multimodal content now. We'll come back to that. Customer interaction. At the moment, I personally, now this is a boomer talking, before I use a chat bot, just shoot me. But you guys are a whole lot more patient than I am, okay? Can y'all deal with those things? It just drives, sorry, my blood pressure goes out of sight. But every company on the customer interface is desperate to do chat bots, okay? To do what? Reduce costs. Okay, now you're going to get in real trouble that way if you're not careful. Personalized marketing recommendations, that ties in directly. Tailored user experiences, that's real sweet, but that's tough. Most people will get on a chat bot and immediately melt down and say, I need to talk to a human. Do they let you talk to a human quickly? No. You have to mortgage your firstborn. Give a blood sample to get to talk to a human. It is awful. So that, as far as I'm concerned, that's first inning on chatbots. Synthetic data, look, they're getting data, the big companies, OpenAI and all the others, Google, they're scraping it off the web. You guys know the difference between copyright and fair use. Fair use means you can use it. Copyright means that would be illegal. Okay, they scrape it anyway. The lawsuits are going along. There's so much data being vacuumed up, we're running out of data. So you can use generative AI to generate synthetic data. That's artificial data. And I know what they do. This is purely technical stuff. Developers using algorithms and other models, pure high-level statistics, rather than scraping it off the web. What are they trying to do? They're coming up with artificial data sets. They very closely mimic the real-world data that they're looking at. It's great when the data you're collecting is challenging, expensive, or time-consuming, or you've already sucked it off the internet, or you're getting sued. Okay, it does help you address data scarcity. You can balance data sets, especially, some of you have run into this already, where you've got a class that's underrepresented. Fraudulent credit card transactions. In the healthcare area, people are generally sick with a condition. And some divorce data sets, you get underrepresented one side or the other. So you can balance those out, and it really helps you handle privacy. If you've got to use real personal data, like in a healthcare set or even a customer data set, synthetic data really helps you mask the privacy of individuals. This is very cool. It works except for, well, we'll talk about that. Simulation, same thing. Generate data, I can also generate sims. And this is really business applicable. The simulations are excellent. They're multimodal now. And as you know, they're a whole lot cheaper and safer and faster than for testing and training, which is really great. Okay. Then you get to what the hot button today is, which are AI agents. Well, notice, what do I have? I got autonomous or semi-autonomous software, and they're powered by the large language models, other machine learning models. Notice what they do. They look for existing conditions, they make decisions, and they take actions. Okay? They're looking for goals. I want to achieve this goal or complete this task with minimal or no human intervention. What am I looking at? I'm looking at a business process. You pick the process, you can put an AI agent on. Now, can you do it successfully? Well, that's really, really dicey. These are multi-step processes. Some of it's pretty simple: requisition, form examination, data entry. Others are not so much. My recommendation is you keep a human in the loop as long as you can. And I don't mean just through the training cycle. A lot of limitations on these things. We use them anyway, but they're limitations. A lot of compute required. Entire data centers, as you guys know, are being built around the country just to handle generative AI. The training data, you got to figure out you got to be real careful where you're stealing this data off the internet. I mean, it vacuums up no matter what. If I turn one of these models loose in social media, what are you picking up? So you really have to do some data cleaning here, I think. Unfair, inaccurate, skewed outcomes. A lot of the garbage on social media gets picked up too. Notice unfiltered data from web scraping. Where is this material coming from here? Sexist, racist, intolerance. Well, it's coming off social media. So-called news outlets. A lot of implications. If you have lousy data, you're going to get lousy decision making. We ignore that too much. Now, what you can do, you can check for bias. Somebody, and you're going to have data engineers over in your technical people, you're going to have to really examine the training data. Diversity representativeness is statistically able to check, you're able to check that with statistics. You can actually use machine learning other than a separate application to identify bias patterns, and we do. Transparency, that's great. Ethical guidelines, this is where the humans come in, and user feedback. In the business world, I think you can get user feedback. We have a lot of stealth generative work going on where employees are using generative AI and not saying anything to their companies. Okay, so this box right here is Auburn University's box. So I have one sitting right beside me now that's Rainer's box, and I want to use generative AI over here and take that and put it over here. And don't think everybody in outreach land is not going, yeah, that's me. Okay, copyright issues. Everything that I've written in 35 years as an academic has been scraped. Okay, it's all copyrighted. So I'm input to all your models. And so are you. Everything you guys put out there has also been scraped. Welcome to the party. As long as nobody sues, that's okay. No, it isn't. You got to have deep pockets to go after these companies. And that's really tough. And you have to look at it this way. You're Amazon. You guys know Amazon has an interesting publishing function. You can write a book yourself and just send it up to Amazon, and they will help you with the editing if you ask. And if you say, I want you to handle the marketing and put it on the Amazon store, you know, the Kindle store, whatever, they'll take care of that for you. Then they take a cut out of the book sales, and et cetera, et cetera. A lot of people in the last 3 years have totally written books all off GPT or Claude. I mean, complete books. It's called AI slop. Y'all seeing that term coming out now? AI slop. Okay, that's not the only place. There are a whole lot of other places where it's coming out too. Letters of recommendation. Guys, I know it's a pain. I know it's a pain to write emails. You gotta be careful on this stuff. So at any rate, we've got lawsuits coming up off this because they've gone out and vacuumed stuff up. I'm not quite sure. We're at the appellate court, I think, on at least a couple of those lawsuits. So you can get legal actions like I'm talking about. I will tell you where it's really troublesome, not in the States, it's in Europe. GDPR, the General Data, whatever GDPR stands for, I forgot. But they've got very severe data privacy regulations over there. And I do know our big companies have paid a bunch of money over there because of those violations. Ownership of the content that comes out. If I scrape copyrighted data and use it, or the neural network uses it, and I get output, and I put that in my AI slop book at Amazon, who owns that? Especially if I copy and paste it. I'm not sure. I'd say there's a bunch of lawyers working on it right now. Developer of the AI, the system, is OpenAI there, Anthropic. What about the user who prompted it? I mean, this is really fascinating stuff that just keeps percolating around the court system. So be careful, I'm telling you. Okay, all of you run into hallucinations. You all have. Boy, they look good though, don't they? If you don't back check it, it really looks good. When we first started using this, where we got the most hallucinations in academia was in citations. Man, those things could make citations that look fantastic. So what you had to do is go off in a separate browser, stay out of the AI side of the browser, put the citation in, then have it tell you there is no such thing. So yes, nonsensical content, but what's really scary is not the nonsensical part, it's what looks really good. It looks great, but it's wrong. And then, of course, deep fakes, we're in trouble. That's probably the scariest part of what we run into now with people, because I've got your lip movements just right, lip, tongue, facial expressions, and I've got you saying something totally different that you have never said. You know, like I hate everybody from Tuscaloosa. I did not say that. Remember I took deep fake. So you gotta be careful because they're hard to notice, and in politics it's a mess. It can definitely decrease public trust. What really worries you, it's not that people don't trust it, it's that they believe it. And of course, polarization comes from that naturally. Okay, now you do have some measures. There are some algorithms being developed to look for this content. You can check metadata, you can check timestamps and that sort of thing. Boy, that's expensive. Digital forensics, if you ever want a hot field and you want to get technical, get into forensics. That's like cybersecurity on steroids. We're trying to do some work with blockchain, et cetera, et cetera. Policies and regulations, that's not going to work. Why? Too slow. Way too slow. By the time any government does anything, I've gone through a bunch more generations. Raising public awareness. That's only if the public wants to be raised. Okay? If it's over here and you believe it, then you're aware. But that means the other side's wrong. If it's over here, that side's wrong. You get the picture. That's tough. Privacy concerns, you can check this. I don't know, are any of you in the advanced version, all y'all using the free versions of GPT and Claude, Gemini and so on? Okay, that means they keep your data. Whatever you put in on prompt stream, they've got it. Okay, why? Because they use it for training data. That's pretty cool. We're all giving them data. But if you put in sensitive corporate data, not a good idea. If you use the private version, it's really interesting. Ask the model, if you're on the advanced, where you're paying $20 a month, was it GPT 5.0 Pro or whatever it is, ask it how long it keeps your data if you're in private mode. Put it on private mode. When I asked it last week, it said 30 days. Oh boy. Let me put in some sensitive data and it'll keep it for 30 days. I don't know who else has access to it. I guess Sam Altman gets to see anything he wants on OpenAI. That's one thing, corporate data. The other thing is personal information about individuals. You gotta be very careful using these things, healthcare space, customer-facing space, et cetera. And of course, nobody asks us for consent.
Mine said, don't keep a memory of what you say once the chat ends.
Which one said that? Which model?
5 Pro.
5 Pro says, I don't remember anything after I cut it off.
Yeah, it says, once you end a private chat, I don't remember a thing.
Okay, let me tell you what happened. That's what I really appreciate that because what I did, I'm on 5.0 and I was working with it Friday. And this morning about 6:30, I got back in, re-logged in, and said, do you remember our conversation from Friday? Zoop, there it was. I said, I thought you forgot. It was fascinating. I don't believe them, just personally, but be careful. It's like I've got a car to sell you, and I'll sell it to you on the internet. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. You don't know that. Okay, information leakage. Well, here's the deal. It's not leakage from your end, it's leakage from the company's end. And like I said, be careful who got your data. I like the balancing personalization and privacy. These techniques, differential privacy, adds random data and sensitive information. That's fine. They want to obscure individual entities. A lot of this in the healthcare space. Federated learning, they're learning on the edge rather than in a central server. That's like putting your finger in a dike with the water coming over the top of it. So that's the guts of generative AI. The problem is that there's a lot more going on. Do this again, huh? Okay. That's my take on generative AI right there. It's a little spooky. I think everybody's thinking of generative AI now like it's, I know how to drive a car, I know how to prompt, I know how to do this stuff. And so we looked at foundation models. Keep in mind, these people are pushing the envelope. It's not unusual to see 100 times improvement every year. Then you get this. I guess it's only right that they got our diplomas. There's your AI bot getting your diploma. They did most of our schoolwork. It says, oops, and I'll let them do my resume too. So we're not coming to grips with it in education, I'll tell you. New York University. What I can't believe is that students would go there. I mean, that they would literally write the professor and say, I need an extension.
I remember it was a big issue last year during finals. It was this past May, I guess, where ChatGPT was down for an entire day, but it was during like the week of finals for like all the universities, and all over social media you showed everyone complaining about how am I supposed to pass my finals without ChatGPT. I've been relying on it all semester, you know.
That's fascinating. We were watching that conversation going on. What we couldn't understand, the faculty, was that who in the hell still gives online exams?
Yeah.
I'll still get those? Are they on lockdown browsers?
Yeah, but say if they are, they're proctored. Like, you know, we have the Big EO Center where they make you go in and take them
Well, you got to go to the Big EO Center?
to take the online exams now. At least for the classes I've seen.
So somebody's looking over your shoulder constantly to see if you're hotkeying back and forth?
I guess so, yeah.
I got to tell you, my experience has been in all these years, students are much smarter than I am. You guys could figure out a way around an online exam. Okay?
Yeah, there's a reason. Oh, online class averages are higher. Like, yeah,
Yeah, I guess you do.
they are.
Now, do not forget this guy. You look at this. This is Wall-E from the day. It's in the future. You got here the humans, and they're watching their screens just a few inches in front of their faces. These are float chairs because they can't walk. And here's Wall-E. Okay, if I have generative AI, what am I doing to your cognitive processing? Let me rephrase. What are we doing to all of our cognitive processing?
Weakening it?
We're weakening it, by definition. It's a horror show out there. Well, here's your experiment, guys. Dr. Kosmine up at MIT, just recently, I want to say a week ago, no, she did this in June. What she did, she got an experiment, electroencephalogram, y'all know the brain caps. Okay, they're picking up electrical signals on your brain. She picked up 54 students, MIT and Harvard, and they had to write, each one of them had to write an essay. Okay. No digital assistant, human brain only. They'd let you look up books, but you could not use anything digital. Help of internet search engine, they were heavily monitored so that you did not use the AI form of the search engine. Third group, in this case, ChatGPT, she allowed them to use, she had them using GPT only, not Claude 2, just one of those large language models. Lower the level of their brain connectivity. What an EEG measures is the level of neuron firing in your brain. They call it connectivity. That's fine. Neurons connecting to each other. Significantly less activity in your neuronal networks associated with cognitive processing, attention, and creativity. We do know those areas in the brain. So, more firing, mid-level firing, no firing, or limited firing. Limited brain work. You guys are pretty far along. I don't know what we're going to do with fifth graders. Today's fifth graders. That was an interesting study. Notice this. They were taken in a room, told not to go back in the original room, and they were asked one question. You recall anything that you wrote? GPT group, not so much. Really scary. Y'all are familiar with the models naturally, and keep in mind, I want to go back over, large language models are pre-trained to generate language. Okay, we've got all kinds of things going on. Video, music, image generators, text generators. These are now multimodal, okay, which leads to a lot of interesting applications. This is what we're doing. You can use Midjourney to do concept art for product design. I think it's very interesting for advertising, creating customized visual ads for different demographics without physical photo shoots. This is almost like you're running simulations rather than photo shoots. Sales presentations, it'd be interesting to see, you're a salesperson and you guys know how long it would take when you get ready to make a big pitch. You're going to use graphic PowerPoints, diagrams, and so forth to specific clients, how much time you could save. Okay. Video marketing, same thing. Real estate, this is kind of interesting. I'm not sure why I'd really worry about virtual staging of empty properties. Visualizing renovation options, I can see that. Fashion, boy, that'd be, with smart mirrors in retail outlets and all sorts of interactive simulations for training. That's, we're already doing that. Okay, y'all know we have a flight simulator out here at the airport. Delta's given us one or two, but those are interesting applications. Think of the time saved on all that. And my question is, if I went at any of these 7 applications with just human brain only, never mind the time, never mind the effort, that just human brain only versus another equal person to you, which one would come out with the best results? Now, I don't know, I'm asking. That would be fascinating to take a look at. This is what we're doing now with language models, which we're all familiar with. What's interesting here, summarization is important, chatbots are not, sim analysis, not so much. I'll tell you what they've left off, or what your instructors left off, ideation, brainstorming. It's quite possible to go into one of these models where you don't know jack about the topic. Tell it. And then get started, and it will give you a lot of output. And I'm sure you've been here, and that's interesting. Customer inquiries, again, we're back in the chatbot world. I think that's very difficult. If I'm generating blog posts or social media content or anything at scale, if I'm a company, I'm keeping human in the loop on that. Legal, electronic discovery, we're already there. Summarizing contracts or regulations. This scares lawyers to death. What's the very first thing a lawyer, notice legal compliance, what's the very first thing they think about when you summarize?
The legal concerning language.
Yep. We've got bad language in there, or I've somewhere in there they summarized out a critical point. Market research, we've got analytics packages that'll do this, but identifying trends and sentiment, okay. HR is very nervous about this too, because HR is very tightly linked with legal. So if you're going to create or update an employee handbook, you're going to have backup. Process documentation, straightforward training materials. That's great. Now, these are foundation models. These are just examples of accounting foundation models. Okay, where do you get your data? I want you to think about this. I've got the SEC Edgar database for statements and reports. Here's your standards documentation. All right. All the textbooks, the journals, accounting magazines, they get it all. Audit reports, tax codes, regulation, professional accounting form, accounting software documentation. Look what you've got to choose from here to pre-train an accounting foundation model. And the ones that are out there, the most well-known are these 3. What does this help you do? It helps you stay away from a general model like GPT. My guess is you'll get better information out of these things using that. Finance, look what you get. You've got all sorts of possibilities. You have these 4 that are already out there. All this stuff is input, scraped into the finance foundation model. Marketing, all available. HR, notice, if I'm HR, I'm in the process of living with LinkedIn. That's where I'd go scrape the data. But you certainly have all that data. Supply chain management, same thing. You could actually subdivide supply chain management, logistics, fulfillment, and so forth, and come up with even more specific foundation models. Why am I looking at all this? Because you don't have to go out to a general model every time. Analytics, MIS, we have the same type of thing here, just everything you can imagine, and then the foundation models. Very useful. And so when you get through with the accounting and the finance and the business applications, think healthcare, the foundation model. If you really want to get into an enormously difficult industry vertical, pick on healthcare. Now, these are fairly sophisticated, especially MedPalm. That's their Google's medical foundation model, and that thing is really specific. I tell you what, let's do this next one. Yeah. On Monday, we'll take I want to take a look at MedPalm on Monday. All right, let's do that. All right, I'll see you all then.